Alright, so last time I made a good amount of progress on the ID system, but I didn't quite finish up. I was struggling a little bit to figure out this last step. Now, I think what I had at least determined was that this much of it works, and I could just have these things be totally self-defining, with the problem that I'm currently going to have to manually type in 3 more lines of boilerplate that repeats the enum name 3 more times. But if that could now get folded into the header, we'd be done. The problem was, it was proving to be a lot more difficult than expected for reasons I couldn't fully understand. If, let's see, we'll call this keep this on a toggle so that we can turn it on and off as needed. Ideally, we'll get to the point where we can just delete all these, so I don't mind adding more lines to them. Now it wouldn't work because the IDs aren't initialized. So we're going to run a before main. The first problem is how we want to name it. Because if I do this, for whatever reason, it doesn't resolve the enum, or it doesn't resolve this macro back to the enum name. Or, I guess it does, in this case. If I did this, okay, so that's not inside of a macro expansion, and that's why it doesn't work. If I set up a macro expansion to just go ID enum name paste init, and I stuck that right there, what would we get? So from what I can tell, what's happening is Mr. Fourth before main, the macro, it's going to take whatever I put here and not expand it first. I mean, I do know one way that I tend to be able to solve that problem. Okay, so now it is expanding. Man, I need a preprocessor debugger. Why don't preprocessors have their own debuggers? Um, okay, so now this is expanding to this, but this isn't expanding. So what if I replace this with glue now? The point of glue is that it forces the expansion. Now it works. Okay, that's very finicky. The reason it had to be this way was because I want this macro name to expand. And I want this macro name to expand. And so both layers needed the sort of their reapplication logic, I guess. But now I should be able to just I guess I'm gonna need a little help here. ID enum name paste second name isn't gonna work either. I could try glue. That should work. And then this one should just be ID enum name. There we go. And so now these are unneeded. Cool. That is a huge amount of improvement over the original mess of ID system I had. Hey, Terrius Python. JD, the ID, it's just Fourcoder is my editor. You can check it out at fourcoder.net. Go to the Fourcoder Discord, chat with the people who are actively working on it all the time. Okay, so yeah, that's CL compiler. So, is there anything else stopping me from promoting it to the top level? It takes these 3 lines now to create one of these. You need one to set the name of the enum. you have to set the name of the enum again in order to pair a section name with it. I don't know how to do better than that because we still need to be able it would be one thing if this string here was just a parameter to this header, but it's not. That section name is actually going to be expanded anywhere where we use this or this. I guess we don't need init anymore. Yeah, this is the ID system. So the ID system came into existence on Wednesday. I don't know if you followed that part of it. At first, I wasn't calling it the ID system. It took me a little while to figure out how to name it. But the point of all of this is now I can reference things like, okay, so how do I reference protected, the protected tile from within the protect tile? And it's no longer runtime string literal matching, it's compile time, link time linking. Yeah, so where it's at is it now works. I can create these macros. There's another layer of improvement that I think that we're going to add next. So we'll get into that. But this right now, the way it works is this is a macro written for the RPG simulator that uses one of the IDs. So each ID system, or I've actually been switching to calling them enums, and maybe a naming pass is also necessary here, but it's basically a way to program an enum, but where the enum values get declared and added throughout the code rather than in a centralized place. And that way you can do something like throw them in a macro here. So this is declaring the protected tile so that this can link to it, but this macro here will define that ID. And so what's happening is each tile script gets a small consecutive ID generated by the set of all of the scripts. And when I link to them through identifiers that are statically known, so that they just, it ends up with being very close to just having the actual ID hard-coded in. It's just not quite 100% there. There's a little bit of runtime work. So the way it actually works is it takes the address of a 1-byte variable, and those 1-byte variables are arranged to be consecutive. But in order to make them small, we have to know the base address of that range. So all the tile enum values, for instance, are in a sequence together. They're all consecutive. And then if we know what the smallest one is, then we know that one's ID number 1, and then the next one's ID 2, and so on. So this here expands to an address, and then at runtime we have to subtract a variable bias to adjust it to an ID. What I'd like to do is to push the concept a little bit farther to fully baking it down to just a single constant. But in order that is a small consecutive ID system. But in order to get there, we would need to do some linker object file magic in the build process. So this is the half measure. It gets us almost all the way there, but there's an extra subtraction that has to happen before you actually get from the statically known value to the ID you want. Okay, so I think the system's pretty good. Now like I said, there's one last big thing we can do with that. I think this was pretty much done as it is, in the sense that this could be good enough to put in my base layer. Maybe one thing I want to do before I put in my base layer is make a final decision on what I'm going to name everything. And I could just go into that and be done, but there's another step to this that I've been thinking about. And that's the ID system solves a problem, and if I can think about what problem it solves, I could actually look at what I've left over, what isn't solved by the ID system, and I could see moving even more of the problem, the original problem, into the ID system. So here's the whole thing that it does. It creates these small consecutive IDs, and then at initialization time, I can ask how many IDs there are and allocate an array of these protos. And so for the tile enum, I have an array of protos, and then for the character enum, I have an array of protos, and for the party enum, I have an array of protos, and for the route enum, I have an array of protos. So each one gets its own array of protos. Each one gets its own set of its own sequence of small consecutive IDs, which index that array of protos. But then I go and make these macros like RPG tile and RPG. What else do we have here? RPG party and RPG. Did I use the RPG route macro yet anywhere? I can get rid of these. RPG route doesn't look like it. RPG character. That's from the old version, so no, I haven't used those two yet, but you can see I'm already making these kinds of macros for party, and whenever I wanted to reference my routes or my characters, I would use the same kind of thing. And that's fine, but what I'm seeing is that what I actually want is the proto pointer everywhere, right? I'm using this to get to the proto pointer. I don't see a lot of cases where I'm going for the ID. The ID would be if I used this macro, this one, and I use it inside the thing that gets the pointer. So I use it there, 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 and there. Here I define it. And then this isn't it. This isn't it. That's not it. That's not it. All right, none of these are actually using it. So the only real uses are wrapped in these things that get pointers. So the final thought here is if what I actually want is a static array of protos, but I don't want to have to define static, like I don't want to have to code in the count on these things. I want to declare them like global variables, but then index them like they're an array. So what that means is that this assumption right here might have been the wrong one. See, I was thinking that the whole point of the thing is to come up with a system that gives you an ID system, but what if what I wanted to do was to just do the array thing, right? That would lead to me writing a bunch of this in a very different way. So today I'm going to try it out. I'm going to try replacing the tile enum with a tile array that is a magic array, and we'll just code it by hand and see where things go. So basically we just need to replace RPG tile. We also need in the it's over to rewrite this tile script macro to work with the new thing, because we're not going to ID def and ID raw anymore. We're going to have something slightly different going on, and so yeah, we just need to approach the whole thing a little differently. So we're going to have a lot of similar pieces here. And again, we're just starting from the same exact idea, but then we, instead of putting in U8s, we're just going to say put in the proto and call it just call it that. Yeah, the whole way the ID system works is through memory sections. That's how I pulled it off in the first place. There's a couple ways I could have done it without that, but this seemed like the least intrusive way. And for the ID system, I think there's a version where I go and adapt more object file magic than I already have, just to eliminate the extra section. But if it's going to be an array anyways, then that becomes a little less necessary. The downside is still each section the granularity on the allocation of a section is a page. So you're basically setting aside 4K for a few small handfuls of arrays. But those small handfuls of arrays might grow to be a few K anyway, so it's maybe fine, right? It's like not that big a deal, I don't think. So long as you're not trying to make, you can't do these dynamically. So if you end up with like thousands of these, then I think you're making a mistake. But I could see, coding up, my tile character party, those kinds of things. Maybe character party and route all end up being the same, like defined within the same space because of the way things work. The tiles are quite a bit more unique. And so it might make sense to once I have really good command over these things, it might make sense to Lego brick these together and let this be separate. So I think I'm in good shape for this technique here. Sec name, decal. Okay, so that's this part. And then instead of getting an ID, you would just say, get me the tile. And you know what? I'm putting in A's everywhere as if I'm cloning the enum thing. But I guess it's just I don't want to have to redo all of the parameterization later, so I'm gonna not name it tile. I'm gonna name it like proto or something like that. And then instead of getting an ID here and doing some arithmetic, all we are doing is getting the address of this variable. Okay, like that's the whole plan. The address of that global variable. That's global. The way in which it's still an array is that they are the only thing exclusively packed into that data section, so they form an array in memory when they get linked together into that data section. But we still want to be able to get to the count. So maybe we'll end up doing something like this. RPG protos u64 count. And then we're still gonna need to initialize it from a section name. And so here's how you'll have to define it. It's going to be a lot like the ID def thing. To define it, you'll go RPG proto array RPG tile array, I guess. Then if the compiler is CL, you're going to need to set up a section called RPG tiles or .rpg tile. Right. And then you're going to want a Mr. Forth before main. Of RPG tiles init, RPG proto array init, RPG tile, RPG tiles. Self image, get section by name, sec name, range, U64 range. Array protos equals RPG proto pointer. Putter from int range dot first. Array count equals range dot one past last minus range dot first divided by the size of an RPG proto. Yeah, protos are basically static. They're basically static data, except that I don't like having to declare them through cstatic data declaration, so I'm initializing them in a more complex way, aka the scripts. The scripts are basically, the scripts themselves are a little bit of runtime code, but the proto carries around some function pointers and some proto pointers to other protos, and so initializing it all statically doesn't really work very nicely. So this would get replaced like this: RPG proto decal, RPG tiles heart, and attack. Right, now we want to replace RPG tile. That's now just RPG proto RPG tiles n. It's literally just that, because we're just, it's just a global variable access now. So it's literally going to be hard coded in the correct pointer. And then RPG tile script symbol display is a bit like RPG proto def RPG tiles symbol function RPG hook signature RPG symbol tile script, RPG register, symbol, tile script, display, RPG reg data kind, tile, RPG tile, symbol, RPG symbol, tile script, and then function RPG hook signature, symbol, tile script. Okay, what did we miss? Right, so the register functions believe they're getting a raw ID, when actually what they are getting is a data pointer. We can call this like the... I mean, it's not necessarily always going to be a proto pointer, but it's like, now I have 2 pointers. The first one is the pointer to the data slot for the tile character party or route, the proto, and the second one is a hook. Except that's not true. The second one is sometimes actually a pointer to a string as well. This is when we are flattening the array, so we're copying a bunch of loosely constructed proto pointers or reg datas into a packed array. This is this now. Okay, so the way this one would have to work. Okay, what am I thinking? Protokind init. I'm thinking that isn't going to be an ID enum anymore. I think that's going to be an RPG proto array. Yeah, a bunch of this is going to change again. So this function is just a high-level wrapper around how proto initialization works. but we're not going to be able to do proto init the same way at all. Where is that? Proto init from reg data. Yeah, all of this. All of this is out again. Well, let's see. That's not quite true. The ID check and the init from literal are going to stay the same because they take proto pointers. And I think the init tile's also fine. The only one that's actually off is the one called init from reg data. I always love it when I get to the point of being able to just write the APIs as referencing the pointers. That feels like the lowest level thing. A pointer resolves to the data you want to touch for free. It's the finished resolution, right? It doesn't require a context state be coupled with the ID to finish the resolution. It doesn't require a data structure. It doesn't require a computation of any kind. And so whenever an API converges to being written right on terms of the pointer, in terms of the pointers rather than through the IDs or something, I get the sense that I've moved it in the right direction. Okay, so it's going to look a lot like this one. There's no need for an ID check or for getting the proto pointer. You just go straight into doing the work. There is a need for getting the proto kind in the parse function. No ID checking, just start parsing. Pick the proto you've already got. So you're just gonna script. Yeah, you grab the script string from the reg data. You parse it based on whichever type, whatever reg data type we've got here. Then you construct the proto from the literal. You set the name, and you're done. Yeah, that works. Okay. This is can I figure out how to? There we go. Masayoshi Takanaka, I believe. I'm never confident with the name. Masayoshi Takanaka. It feels very. It's not actually Nintendo music or. It's very. It's its own thing. That is kind of nice. But it's just stands on its own. It's a very familiar kind of Nintendo-y vibe somehow, though. Okay, Decal. RPG. Proto-Decal. RPG tiles protected. Now these ones aren't going to work until I transition all of them off of the ID system. Now, if I was gonna build everything out this way, it would be cool if I could do it without making it just for my protos. What is this? It's not a proto array. It's a static array. It's a magic array. It's static. It's like a declarative array. I don't know. Gav decal. Now here's where it gets weird. You have to give it the array and a type. Technically, you won't need a type there because the global variable's already going to have it. Now, there's nothing enforcing that the type has to be the same everywhere now. So if you ever mixed and matched those types, you'd be screwing the system up and getting everybody confused. And in order to init the array, you're going to need to know the item size now. You know, there is an alternative way to think about this, which is this function is so simple that this is silly, this is fine, this is just size of RPG proto as a... The array of interest is RPG tiles. Which actually can be a proto array if I want. Because I could do... So this one has to know that it's dealing with a proto. This one needs to know. Wait, that's not right. When I define it, I give it a type. That has to be a parameter to that either way. Unless I just hard code it into the RPG system that it's for protos only, right? If I want to, say, for instance, wrap the totally generic one in a proto system, then that works. But if I want to do it without extra cruft, keeping them coupled helps a little bit. Joe asked why I'm not using C++ instead of C. I mean, the main reason is so that all the code I write can compile on compilers that support both, or that support, like, most compilers that compile C++ can compile my code just fine because I keep my code legal in both languages. But there are plenty of compilers that are C compilers, and I'd like to work on those. Um, let's see here. Um, I think I'll keep it without trying to type the array. I'll let the arrays be a void data. And we'll get that from a T later. Tile sec name. Okay, so this much of it can become another header-like thing. This should be Mr. Fourth comp time. id.def. Okay, I'm gonna simplify the ID system here. We're gonna keep that around for a bit. So this is where the section name gets used. id enum name dot count. id enum name dot count is 1 plus tile range. That's still in the text. Get rid of that. Yeah, that's how I like to think about it. But I mean, if we're being honest here, I also sit here all day and push the language to do all kinds of strange, wacky stuff that might not be that portable between compilers. Uh, these are kinds of things that aren't standard in C or C++ or any other C-like language, but that are very practical. So I feel like they actually are portable in the sense that they are probably available on most compilers through some backdoor. And I don't know, you just got to do the practical work of getting a hold of what works for yourself rather than hoping that the next C-like language that comes out is going to just cover all this stuff once and for all. Okay, why are we breaking here? I don't see. Oh, I probably know why. We probably need to throw gath in there, like that. Straight like this. Gath decal, RPG proto. Kind of makes me want to just write RPG tile decal though, and then let that and that go like that. So I'm just saying let's throw into the scripting system a little bit of protection against misuse of the gath system here. RPG tiles, RPG proto, get those right so we get those types right everywhere. Okay, so I want to move this into a definition file like we did with the ID system. This will look like ID def. Oh, that's still persisting. Still says RPG. There's before main name. Here's the section name. Get the image, or get the section from the image. Get the range, count. Count and bias isn't right. What we need to do now is get the data. Array name dot data equals putter from int on the range first, and the count is the range dot one pass last minus the range dot first divided by the size of the array type. Okay. That looks like it's working for the tiles, so that rules all that down to these 4 lines. And then the rest, these are wrappers for convenience of the RPG system, and this is a wrapper for the definition of the convenience of the RPG system. So again, more convenience for writing the RPG code. So I should be able to go and apply the same kind of logic to each of these. So instead of character enums, we're going to have a characters array. That defines the characters array. Now, to get a character, you just do gath_ref RPG characters n. To define a character, you gath_def RPG character RPG proto. Right here, you do an RPG character on the symbol to get the pointer. Okay, so again, to reference it, you just do gath reference on the RPG party's name. And in order to define it, you do RPG parties, RPG proto symbol. So this is gath_ref RPG routes n, gath_def RPG routes RPG proto symbol, and this is just RPG route symbol. What do you have in mind here? This is characters, obviously. Oops, still ID stuff going on right here. We want to just directly reference the party pointer. And now we have to replace proto_kind init from the context functions. Proto_kind init was this one I zeroed out. We need something a little different, something like RPG proto init, proto kind init. I mean, the most direct solution is to just hand in the arrays instead of the enums of IDs. All you have to do is scan no ID allocation is necessary. The array has the count. So what used to happen is proto alloc, and now what's happening is that we're just going to set the protos for the particular proto kind right from the array. Except everything is a little bit different than it used to be, because I used to be able to be sure that there would be a null. There is one way I could pull that off. But it's definitely very undefined. Definitely heavy reliance on undefined behavior here. I could define a null for each of these right away, and that will work, although it'll only work because I happen to know that it puts these things out in the order they're declared, but it doesn't have to do that. Okay, so that doesn't work, which is interesting. Show me. Okay, I get it. Okay, so somehow they're not getting initialized. Let's take a look at this part, because this is the most likely culprit. RPG tiles has a pointer. And if it knew that its data was an RPG proto array with 5 elements, would it be happy about that? It looks like it is. So we're storing the count and the pointer base. Then each reg data gives us a proto. It didn't work. I mean, there are 5 of them here, but null didn't get the first spot. So this one's gonna fail. And then the next one comes in. What proto did it get? So it's in good shape. This one is for the attack tile. The number of these is only 4, so 2, 3. It's done, and that's it. Why didn't heart go in this slot? Okay, well, if that doesn't work, then fine. We'll just go to ignore the proto, give me the, or ignore the ID, give me the proto from the reg data and initialize it. So that all works. Um, okay. That feels pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that as the plan for how to proceed. Yeah, this layer here definitely deserves a cleanup pass. There's something funky weird happening with it, but I don't know if it's funky weird because of the static data system at all. I mean, the only thing that's kind of weird is the fact that the static data system can't do anything to guarantee a null slot in the initial array. Um, because I definitely want the zero IDs to be reserved for meaning null, so that the first real proto would always be ID 1. But the mapping there isn't that important because that's just really serialization now. Everything is working without IDs. They're all pointing to each other directly, right? The static references themselves are pointers. All right, I think that's about as far as I need to push it for now. This is all looking good. Let's put in the extra decal helpers here. And okay, I think that's it. I think that's it for magic IDs, and that's it for this transition to doing the data as a separate section. Yeah, I did make 4 coder. initially. Yeah. Um, I need to pull up a to-do list. We just got out of a long, deep dive that started on Wednesday. Here we are at the first hour and a half of Friday. Having finished that deep dive, so oh well, thank you, and I'm glad you do. That's certainly the point. I'm kind of stumped here. So I'm on a marathon, and I've got today and tomorrow left to work on this RPG simulator. And there's tons and tons and tons of frontiers on it right now. And I think that the sad thing is that this deep dive into this magic ID system and then the magic gathered array system that we did sort of transformed it into this morning, that was a little bit of a deep dive into a particular problem, and coming back out of it, I don't really feel like I know where to go next with the RPG simulator. I mean, I can just take any one of these and start making progress, but this new piece of magic is pretty nice, and developing this further seems like the right thing to do now. Like, it feels like I need to go and test this out against multiple compilers and operating systems, make a report of all the things I've just learned about it, and get this out to people because it's a pretty cool tool. And I don't want to have it all to myself anymore. So maybe that's the right thing to do, is to be done with the RPG simulator until the next time I make a push on it to have more cool stuff fall out. I don't know. At this exact minute, it feels like it'd be a little bit forced to keep going on the RPG simulator. I have a slightly older to-do list. Let me check that one. And I have a project binder with notes about when I'm planning on getting to some other stuff. So maybe no and no. No, I'm not doing that right now. Yeah, that worked out. Okay, I know what we could work on. I got a good next step. I didn't really do a write-up. I don't really know what to say overall about 4Coder. It seems to me like there are just a bunch of great frontiers for um, making 4Coder a lot smoother. It's the kind of problem that I don't know how to actually pose what exactly the solution is. I don't know. Um, my feeling about 4Coder is that I can still remember from that set of streams, or basically that it's a bunch of the framework's all there, but each individual piece needs to be re-envisioned a little bit. Like the build system is off, the header organization is off for the split between the core and the custom layer. Lots of stuff. Yeah, it might be good if someone else summarizes it for me, because I mean I've already kind of lost interest again. Not in the sense that I've lost interest in the possible developments of 4Coder, but like it's fallen out of my head. And I think what I did in those streams was about as much synthesizing as I can bring to bear on 4Coder. I still feel a little uncertain about getting heavily involved. I'm gonna go to Paging Turner's question real quick. Do you have any advice on starting maintaining a long-term project? I've spent a few weeks on something that seems like it would be need a few years of work to get anywhere good. Um, that's a great question. I think that there are different personalities and things that help different people apply, their efforts to long-term projects. For me, it's important that I feel like I can see something good in it from the first few weeks. So like this RPG simulator is a little bit silly in the sense that it's not a tool that I think other people are looking for. I don't know whose problem it solves, but it's so much fun to work on that it kept me going past week 2 into week 6. And now I'm doing a full architecture rewrite because of how much fun I had in that initial burst. And I want to be able to have that much fun again with a lot much more solid grounding. And so like all of this hard work is highly motivated by how much fun that first burst was. And I think that's how I've tended to do it. 4Coder was similar. For the first few months, there was a huge uh, uh, there's that early sense of burst, which I couldn't tell you if it was many months or 1 month or a few weeks, but that early sense of burst excitement about the project made it worth it to go for 5 years. So, if you have something that seems like it would need a few years to get good, the question is it good enough for you to have fun with it now? If it's not, then you're probably thinking of something that's like, there are things that, and people who can do this, which are problems that it's like, I see that this could be good, but it would take a year to get even to the good part. And so I need to work with delayed gratification the whole time. And there's a lot of like, are you like doubt that can come in there. Like, are you really sure that it's gonna get somewhere good, or is that in your head? Um, it's been my experience though that excitement is actually a great compass. Whatever you find when you're chasing down the excitement over a new project is rarely the object of the excitement, but it's a bunch of other cool stuff. That's my experience. So the advice on starting and maintaining a long-term project is to don't maintain any projects, but rather start enough of them that you find one that feels like lightning in a bottle. And once you've found that, um, then give yourself permission to go a little bit farther. Don't invest in a long-term investment after the first 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whenever that first burst of excitement starts to fade. You're still not setting yourself up to maintain a long-term project. Just tell yourself to push a little further and keep going where there was excitement and see if you can reclaim the excitement when it gets lost. But like that first thing is what I look for. And I feel like if you look back over the last 6 or 8 months of what I've been doing on YouTube and with Mr. Forth programming stuff in general, I've kind of just been trying out new projects, hoping to find lightning in a bottle, and then kind of moving on when nothing was clicking. And the reason that I'm doing the RPG simulator now, even though it's not really a part of the initial goals I had, is because it's got that lightning in a bottle feeling right early on, and so I am now transitioning to long-term maintenance ideas because it kind of earned that much from me in those first few weeks. Hopefully that helps. That isn't terrible advice. I don't know. That's how I tend to do things. So, um, okay. So I know what I want to work on next. That's this thing, the thing where the tiles look like they need a different parallel array to the protos. I'm gonna work on that because that feels like the closest thing I have to an issue related to this new gather array trick that we did this morning. But I'm gonna do that after like a 20-minute break or so. I'm gonna leave the stream running this time. Usually well, let's see. It's been, yeah, I'm gonna turn the stream off and come back. I'm gonna probably take a little lunch break here, and I'm shooting for like 30 minutes to an hour. I was gonna say 20 minutes, but um, I think it'd just be good to have a short wind down and then get back into this. It's a little bit too hungry in here to keep working. Cool. I'm glad that helps. Um, yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. It's just determine for yourself if the project has earned your attention. I'll see y'all in a little bit.